The mountain doesn't scream before it bites. It whispers. That's what the old-timers always said. But I never believed it until the air in Section 4 changed. It wasn't a sound, really. It was a pressure, a heaviness that pressed against your eardrums like deep water. Elias froze, his hand hovering over the controls of the continuous miner. The massive steel teeth of the machine were silent, but the rock above them was singing. He looked at the kid, Samuel, whose eyes were wide and white in the gloom. Before Elias could shout, before he could even draw a breath to warn him, the whisper turned into a roar. And then the world simply ceased to exist. The alarm clock didn't buzz. It clicked. It clicked, a sharp, mechanical sound that cut through the silence of the pre-dawn dark like a pickaxe hitting slate. Elias Vance was awake before it happened. He was always awake before it happened. After 30 years in the mines, your body forgets how to sleep past 4 in the morning. He sat up, the springs of the old mattress groaning under his weight. His knees popped, a sound like dry twigs snapping, a reminder of the thousands of miles he had crawled on them. The air in the bedroom was cold. West Virginia cold, the kind that seeps through the window frames and settles in your bones. Beside him, Martha breathed deeply, a rhythmic, comforting sound. He watched the rise and fall of her shoulder under the quilt. He didn't touch her. He didn't want to wake her with his cold hands. Hands that were permanently stained with the gray grime of the Blackwood seam. He simply watched her for a moment, anchoring himself to the sight of her warmth before facing the cold. The kitchen was quiet. The linoleum floor was freezing against his bare feet. He started the coffee pot. The gurgle of the water, the only conversation he would have for the next hour. He packed his lunch pail by muscle memory. A bologna sandwich on white bread, an apple, a thermos of black coffee, strong enough to strip paint. He looked at his reflection in the dark window above the sink. The face staring back was a road map of the industry. Deep lines etched around his eyes from squinting in the gloom. A small, blue scar on his chin where a piece of slate had caught him back in '74. He wasn't an old man, not technically, but the mine aged you in dog years. 1 year underground was 7 on the surface. The drive to the Blackwood Ridge mine was a ritual of silence. The truck rattled over the potholed roads, winding through the hollers where the mists clung to the trees like ghosts. He passed the company houses, the rusting cars, the church with the peeling white paint. This was his world, a world built on carbon and faith. The bathhouse smelled of damp wool, stale sweat, and lava soap. It was a smell that never left you. It was the scent of labor. Men moved in the locker rows like specters, stripping off their street clothes and pulling on their mining blues. There wasn't much talk this morning. Just nods. Grunts of acknowledgement. "Morning, Elias," a voice chirped. It was Samel, Tei Kaidim Poop. He was 22, with clean fingernails and a back that stood straight. He hadn't been crushed by the ceiling yet. He still had the optimism of someone who thought the paycheck was worth the risk. "Poop," Elias rumbled, his voice gravelly from the years of breathing dust. "You check your light, charged and ready?" "Both." Samuel grinned, tapping the battery pack on his belt. "Don't call me boss. Just keep your head down today. The barometer is dropping. Low pressure means the gas moves." Elias slammed his locker shut. It was a superstition. Maybe, but every miner knew that when the weather turned on the surface, the mountain breathed differently down below. They walked to the elevator. The cage, it was a steel box dangling over a 1,000-foot throat. The cable hummed. The men packed in tight, shoulder to shoulder, a brotherhood of necessity. As the gate clanged shut, blocking out the gray morning light, Elias felt that familiar tightening in his chest. The descent began. The cage dropped. Your stomach stayed at the top for a second before catching up. The air grew warmer, thicker. The smell of sulfur and damp earth replaced the morning chill. Down here, there were no seasons. There was no day or night. There was only the shift. And décolle. The journey to the Festa active mining wall was a 3-mile ride on the electric cart wind as it navigated the low tunnels. The ceiling, the roof, was only 48 inches high here. You learned to hunch. You learned to keep your head tucked, or the rock would take it off. As they rattled through the dark, the beams of their cap lamps cutting through the suspended dust, Elias let his mind drift. It was a dangerous habit, but a necessary one. You had to go somewhere else in your head, or the claustrophobia would eat you alive. He thought about the kitchen table, the stack of bills that sat under the fruit bowl. The mortgage was nearly paid, but the truck needed a transmission, and Martha needed dental work. It was always a trade. You traded your lungs for a life. You traded your sunlight for security. "Hey, Elias!" Samuel shouted over the whine of the motor. "You think the union is going to push for that raise next month?" Elias didn't look back. He kept his eyes on the ribs, the walls of the tunnel, watching for cracks. "Don't spend money you ain't got, pup. And don't count on the company giving you nothing but a hard time." Samuel laughed. To him, the mine was a stepping stone. He talked about saving up, going to trade school, maybe moving to Charlotte. Elias had heard it all before. He had said the same things 30 years ago. But the coal has a gravity. It pulls you in. The money is good, better than anything else around. And soon, you build a life that requires that money. The trap isn't the rock, it's the lifestyle. They reached Section 4. The continuous miner sat there like a sleeping dragon, a massive machine, 30 tons of steel, designed to chew through the earth. Elias climbed into the operator's seat. He felt the vibration as he powered it up. The massive rotating drum at the front, studded with carbide teeth, began to spin. For the next 4 hours, there was only the noise, the deafening, bone-shaking roar of metal on rock. The machine tore into the coal seam, ripping it from the earth. Dust filled the air, thick and black. The water sprays tried to knock it down, but it was everywhere you tasted Italiano. You felt it coating your teeth. Elias worked with the precision of a surgeon. He watched the roof. He watched the floor. He manipulated the levers, guiding the machine, cutting ton after ton of black gold. Samuel was behind him, running the shuttle car, hauling the coal away to the conveyor belt. They were a team, a well-oiled machine of flesh and steel. But Elias couldn't shake the feeling he had this morning. The air felt heavy. The ventilation curtains were flapping. The mountain felt tight. He signaled for a break. He needed to check the roof bolts. He shut down the cutter head. The silence that rushed in was sudden and overwhelming. "Elias," Samuel said, walking up, wiping sweat from his forehead. His face was already black, only the whites of his eyes showing. "You hear that?" "Hear what?" Elias asked, grabbing his sounding radiobrass stick, used to tap the roof. Like ... a thud. Deep inside the pillar, Elias walked to the wall. He tapped the roof stone. "TK, TK, TK." It sounded solid, but then he put his hand on the coal rib. He felt it. A vibration, not from a machine. From the earth itself. The mountain was shifting. "Get back," Elias whispered. "What?" "Get to the man trip." Now, Elias didn't shout often, but when he did, you listened. Samuel turned, confused but moving. Elias grabbed his lunch pail, his eyes scanning the ceiling. The rock dust that coated the walls began to trickle down like snow. That was the sign. The pressure was squeezing the tunnel. Then it happened. It wasn't like the movies. There was no fireball. There was no slow-motion escape. There was a sound like a thunderclap right next to your ear, the sound of a main sandstone layer snapping. The wind hit them first, a massive displacement of air caused by the falling rock. It knocked Elias off his feet, slamming him into the side of the continuous miner. Then came the dark, The lights didn't just go out, they were swallowed. The dust cloud was so thick that even when Elias clicked his emergency light on, the beam stopped 2 inches from his face. It was a wall of particulate matter. He couldn't breathe. He pulled his shirt up over his nose, gasping, choking on the taste of ancient carbony. "Pup!" he screamed. The sound of his own voice was muffled, deadened by the dust. Samuel. Silence. A silence so heavy it felt like a physical weight. Elias scrambled forward on his hands and knees. The floor was uneven now, covered in rubble. He felt jagged rocks, twisted metal. He crawled in the direction Samuel had run. His hand hit something soft. A boot samole. A cough. A retching sound. I'm here." Elias grabbed the boy's shoulder. "You hurt." "Can you move?" "My leg. I think it's pinned." "No, wait. I can move it. It's just trapped under some slate." Elias scrambled over. He dug with his hands, his fingers tearing against the rough stone. He heaved a slab of slate aside. Samuel groaned, pulling his leg free. "We gotta move," Elias said, his voice steady despite the hammer beating in his chest. "The dust is gonna settle, but the methane might be right behind it." They stood up, huddled together in the swirling gray fog. Elias shone his light down the tunnel, back towards the elevator. Block. A wall of rock floor to ceiling blocked the way out. The roof had come down for 50 feet. They were sealed in. They were treated to the face, the only open space left. Section 4 was now a tomb, about 30 feet wide, 6 feet high, and cut off from the world. Time dissolves in the dark. Elias checked his watch, but the hands seemed meaningless. They sat with their backs against the coal rib. Lights turned off to save batteries. They sat in the absolute, crushing blackness. "We're gonna run out of air," Samuel whispered. His voice was high, tight with panic. "No," Elias lied. "The ventilation is cut, but this section is big. We got air for days. They'll have the drill down here before then." "You don't know that, Elias? You saw the fall. It was huge." "I know," Elias said, shifting his weight. His hip was throbbing where he'd hit the machine. "And I know the rescue teams. I know Big Jim is up there right now, looking at the maps. They know exactly where we are." Elias reached into his lunch pail. He found the apple. He polished it on his sleeve in the dark. "Here, eat this. Sugar helps the shock." "I can't eat." "Eat it. Pup." "That's an order." He heard Samuel take a bite. The crunch was loud in the silence. Elias closed his eyes. He let his mind go up. He imagined the phone ringing in his kitchen, Martha wiping her hands on her apron to answer it. The foreman's voice, the silence that would follow. He felt a tear track through the cold dust on his cheek. He wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of her being alone. "I was gonna propose," Samuel said suddenly, "to Sarah. I bought the ring. It's in my locker upstairs, hidden in my street boots." "She's a good girl," Elias said. "Smart. If we done, single quote. T. Stop it." Elias turned his light on for a second, blindingly bright, just to break the mood. He shone it on Samuel's face. The kid was crying, streaks of white cutting through the black dust. "You're gonna give her that ring yourself?" "Do hear me." "It's so quiet, Elias." "Why is it so quiet?" "Because the mountain is done moving for now. It's resting." Hours passed, or maybe minutes. The air began to get stale. Heavy carbon dioxide was building up. Elias felt his head swimming, a dull throb behind his eyes. He knew the signs: sleepiness, confusion. He had to keep Samuel awake. "Tell me about the car," Elias rasped. "The Mustang?" "Cherry red," Samuel mumbled. his words slurring slightly. 1967. Fastback. Good year, Elias said. He slapped his own face to stay sharp. What engine? 289 V8. Gonna rebuild it... ... Keep talking, Pop. Tell me about the engine. Elias started to hallucinate. He saw lights dancing in the corner of his vision. He heard his daughter's voice, from when she was 5 years old, singing a hymn. In the sweet by and by, he shook his head violently. Stay with me. Samuel, I'm tired. Elias, no sleeping. We don't sleep down here. Elias grabbed Samuel's collar and shook him. You listen to me. You got a life waiting. You got a ring in your boot. I got a mortgage and a wife who will kill me if I don't come home for supper. You don't quit on me. Elias forced himself to stand. He paced the small enclosure. 3 steps. Turn. 3 steps. Turn. He banged his wrench against the roof. Bolts clang. A signal? A prayer in steel. Clang. 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 He did it until his arm felt like it would fall off. He did it until he collapsed, gasping for the thin, stale air. And then... ... He heard it. Thump, thump. Faint, distant, coming from the solid rock wall. Elias froze. Pup, wake up! WH... ... What? Listen. Elias banged again. 3 sharp strikes. Silence. THEN. Thump, thump. They're coming, Elias whispered, the relief washing over him like cold water. They're coming. It took 6 hours. 6 hours of listening to the grind of the rescue drill. 6 hours of the sound getting louder, closer, until the wall of the tunnel vibrated with it. When the drill finally broke through, a blast of fresh air hit them. It smelled like diesel and sweat, and it was the sweetest thing Elias had ever smelled. Then came the voices. Hello, can you hear me? We're here! Elias croaked. 2 men, alive. Alive. The extraction was slow. They had to widen the hole. Men crawled through. Men Elias knew. Their faces were grim, focused. When the first rescuer grabbed Elias's hand, he felt the strength of the grip. The brotherhood. They put Samuel on a stretcher first. He was weak, barely conscious, but he was breathing. Elias walked out. He refused the stretcher. He walked through the narrow rescue tunnel, scraping his shoulders, his lungs burning with the intake of oxygen. When the elevator cage finally surfaced, the light was blinding. It was nighttime, but the floodlights of the mine turned the area into day. There were ambulances, police cars, and families. A crowd had gathered at the gate. A sea of faces. Elias squinted, his eyes watering. He saw her. Martha. She was standing by the ambulance, her hands clasped over her mouth. She broke the line. She ran. She didn't care about the coal dust. She didn't care about the grime. She threw her arms around his neck and buried her face in his chest. He held her. He felt her, shaking. He looked over her shoulder and saw Samuel being loaded into the ambulance. Sarah was there, holding his hand, the engagement ring probably still safe in his boot. Elias took a deep breath. The air up here was thin, crisp. It didn't have the weight of the mine. I'm okay, Martha, he whispered into her hair. I'm okay. I thought... ... Se... Sobet? I know. He looked back at the headframe of the mine. The black silhouette against the night sky. The mountain. It sat there, silent, indifferent. It had tried to keep them. It had failed. Elias never went back down. That shift was his last. He took his pension a few months early. The company fought him on it, But the union stepped in. He still wakes up at 4 a.m. sometimes. He sits on the edge of the bed and listens to the house settle. He thinks about the dark. He thinks about the silence. Samuel recovered. He married Sarah. He didn't go back down either. He went to trade school, became a mechanic. Elias takes his truck to him. They don't talk about the mine much. They talk about the weather. They talk about engines. But sometimes, when there's a lull in the conversation, they share a look. A look that says, We know what it's like to be buried. We know the cost of the light. Coal mining isn't just a job in these hills. It's a blood oath. It's a war against the earth itself, and for those who survive the battle, the scars aren't always on the skin. They are in the memories of the drift, in the phantom smell of sulfur, and in the deep, abiding gratitude for every single breath of fresh air. Elias Vance sits on his porch as the sun comes up over the ridge. He drinks his coffee, he watches the mist burn off the mountains, and he realizes that the gold isn't in the ground. It never was. The gold is the sunrise. The gold is the breath. The gold is the time he has left.